Well, hello there, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your weekly NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets. We're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That means each time we ask ourselves what happened last week, what does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show once a week every Sunday evening, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel L.A. Little. If you haven't done so and you want to, just reach up in the right-hand corner, subscribe. Anytime I push public content, you'll get a notification. As far as what did happen, you probably are aware at this point the S&P shot higher. Here's the ending numbers. So we had the big moves on Friday, breakouts 1.5%, 2.5% on the S&P. The Nikkei was down again. It will probably be up tonight. But we had moves in Europe as well. Nice big bounces there. The Brexit news is old news now. What the market is focused on now is the results of what that news was, and that is that all these central bankers are going to have to come out, support this market. At least that's the sentiment. That's what the belief is. That's why these markets are moving like they are. We had commodities in general still hold up, silver, gold. We also had bonds up again, 0.75%, folks. You got bonds, precious metals, and equities all moving in tandem to the north. That doesn't happen all that often, and the odds are pretty good that it continues as the way it looks in the past. So don't expect that to stop anytime soon. The major news was the breakouts, though, and if we look at those breakouts, it's a big deal. And the reason it's a big deal is because you've gotten over some key areas that up until now have held these equities back. Swing point high here, swing point high here. You break over both of them. You got an ABCD structure to the upside. Here's your A and your B and C points, and push into the top side, right? A, B to C, D, bullish ABCD structure. If you pull it back, look at it on the weekly, you got the breakout as well. You can see that there with the red arrow. What are you doing? You're breaking over an area that up until now has been major resistance. And so when you're looking at it here and you push it up and you look at that line, right, that line had held everything back. Now you're breaking over it. And as I told you Thursday, if you tuned in on Thursday, if you haven't, go back and look at the show, the setup was the breakout. I told you that on Thursday. We positioned for that. Members and myself positioned for that prior to the breakout. We got that nice big move up on Friday, and now we're in a good position to try to take advantage of a continued push to the top side. And what else happened? Well, if we look elsewhere, look at the other indexes, they're not quite as bullish. They're going to have to get some follow through. So we'll just look at the NASDAQ as an example of one of them. Here on the NASDAQ, you have the ABCD structure. I didn't actually draw it on the S&P, but I'll draw it here just for the benefit of those that are out there. And you can see the ABCD structure projecting higher. Going to get over these swing point highs. If it does it, already got over this one on the daily. On the weekly, though, it hasn't, right? So if we pop this over, look at the weekly, you're still up here. You're trying to get over it. You got this breakdown point. You're over. You're targeting this higher one and those swing point highs on the daily. Excuse me, on the weekly. And so NASDAQ, NDX haven't been as strong. Russell looks pretty good, trying to push up also. But it's the same setup. All three of those, they're over their B points on ABCDs on the daily time frame, but not on the weekly as you have it on the S&P 500. So some good, some bad, but overall a lot more good than bad. Now if we look overseas, look at the world markets, the epicenter of this entire event, of course, was Brexit. That was focused in the FTSE. I've got it on the weekly. FTSE, the breakdown bar right here, what is it doing? It's coming right into it. Struggling with it, but it's right at it, folks. This is the top of the range if you're looking at it from a range perspective. You get over this, you can push much higher. And so big move off the bottom, right? This is a significant move, 5,800 up to, what is that, let's get the exact number, 6.6. So you get an 800-point move. That's 12%, 3 weeks. That's a pretty good push. Consolidate, yeah, probably makes sense. And then try to break out over that area. So that's the Brexit fallout, at least from a European perspective, in the epicenter of it. If you look elsewhere, you know, the broader areas like the DAX, DAX up here on a weekly basis has centered in this area, right? Still, the big bar is the Brexit bar, and this is the bar that typically holds things. And so if you just carve this out, right, the key is going to be this area. Does it break down or does it break out? That's going to be the question. So if I get rid of this bigger box, right? So what you really want to focus on is the breakout or the breakdown in the coming weeks, because that's when it's going to happen. You got a low down here, you haven't been able to get to it. You got a low here, you haven't been able to break, and you got a high there you haven't been able to break. And if you look at those two, those are in that area. So that's going to be a bigger move once it takes place in the DAX and in the CAX as well. If you look at it, now the CAX actually got more strength than we saw in the DAX. Here on the weekly, you can actually see that as well, with the push up, a little bit better push last week, inside bar this week. That looks like it wants to try and push a little bit higher, but again, carving out that big range inside this move. Finally, if we go to the Swiss market, which actually has again assumed the role of the strongest in the group, the European group, you can see the Swiss market much stronger than these other markets, and I expect the Swiss market is the one that's going to lead them up. Swing point low over here, you've tested into it before. That's the retest regen bearish. I would expect it to get back in there and test it one more time and see if it can get over it. If you look over at Asia, of course, the Nikkei's been hurt pretty badly as a result of a yen strength. You can see the Nikkei coming down to test that high volume low, and I do expect it's going to test it and probably hold it before it's over. If we go to the Hong Kong market, and let me find Hong Kong, here we go. If we go to the Hong Kong market, look at that one, you can see here you have the same sort of setup that you see in Europe, and that is that these things are still probing down at the bottom, but they're trying to get the turn and make the move to the top side. If all the European central banks and the Asian and Chinese as well start to move to a more easing policy, you're going to see all of these equity markets try to lift. That's, of course, what they're trying to do to them. These are in downtrends, whereas the U.S. market, totally different. U.S. market is the only one that has the larger strength economically. And so that's the setup, and that's what's trying to take place. Where do we think the week's going to go? You know, if you had a crystal ball, you had to lay it out. You know, I try to do that for you. I do it more so for the members to give them the edge, but I give you a general idea. You got to expect this market's going to try to hold. You just got the breakout. The key is to hold 2103. You hold it on the weekly this week, you're probably going to get a further push. Have yourself a great one. Thanks for joining me. And if you do want to check this stuff out, just pop over to the site, right? TA Today's site, there's a Get Started button. You can hit that button, Get Started. Send you some videos that I did not that long ago that outlined how the neoclassical method works, get you jump started for the future. Have yourself a great one. Take care. I'll see you later.